Top scientist lab has been shut down following Bombshell vaccine discovery, News Punch Sean Al-Dubai reports. Police have raided the laboratory of two world-renowned scientists who recently discovered evidence of nanoparticles polluting nearly every major vaccine. Nanoparticles? This is a new one. Dr. Antonietta Gatti and her husband, Dr. Stefano Montanari, founded an Italian laboratory called Nano-Diagnostics for the evaluation of the pathological tissues of patients. Collective Evolution reports, recently the Italian police raided their home. The police took all the digital assets that were owned by the two nanopathologists, including their laptops, their computers, their flash drives, basically years of work and research. James Grundvig, via the World Mercury Project, describes what happened quite well. Quote, because Gatti and Montanari had taken the research of nanodust and nanoparticles from in vivo, thus performed in a live organism, and in vitro, performed in a test tube, to what unseen contamination might reside in vaccines in 2016, they came under the microscope of the United States, European, and Italian authorities. They had touched the third rail of medicine. They had crossed the no-go zone, with the purported crime being scientific research and discovery. By finding nano-contamination in random vaccines, Gatti and Montanari revealed for the first time what no one knew, that vaccines had more than aluminum salt adjuvants, polysorbate 80, and other inorganic chemicals in them. They also harbored stainless steel, tungsten, copper, and other metals and rare elements that don't belong in shots given to fetuses, to pregnant women, to newborns, to babies, to toddlers, developing their lungs, immune, and nervous systems, end quote. The scientists published their work in January 2017 titled New Quality Control Investigations on Vaccines, Macro and Nano Contamination. If science wasn't plagued by corruption, an investigation should have started. Healthcare agencies would have become involved in vaccine safety policies and would have come under intense scrutiny, but that never happened. Below is a recent interview with the two, done by Surete Vaccine. The description of the video reads, two Italian researchers have found nanoparticles are polluting almost all vaccines. The small size of these particles allow them to enter our cells and have a permanent inflammatory effect. Mrs. Gatti was about to testify in Parliament inquiry on vaccine damages of Italian military courses, but both researchers have been raided by police and all their material has been taken away, end quote. Nanoparticles are very small bits of matter. They can enter into the human body, as the pair of scientists discovered in the 90s. This is why we have so much published research linking various chemical products, like cleaning agents, to the destruction of human health. These nanoparticles are produced by waste incinerators, car traffic, many other different ways. Because they float in the air, we can inhale them, which means they enter our lungs and then enter into the blood within minutes. And this leads to a number of problems. These particles are carried by the blood to every district of the body, and as they explain in the video below, when they enter into the tissues, the body cannot get rid of them. And so those particles stay there forever and are the cause of various diseases that we see today. They explain how they've been analyzing and studying vaccines for the past 15 years. Quote, both vaccine and the tissue, which was hit by the particles contained in the vaccines, because we discovered that those vaccines were polluted by particles. Those particles were contained equally in the vaccine and the tissue, so we started to analyze vaccines, end quote. And they go on to explain with regards to their most recent vaccine study linked above. Quote, after a while, an Italian university sent us a student for her thesis, and we analyzed 19 different vaccines with her, finding all of them polluted by micro and nanoparticles. Then we went to analyze them, and now we analyzed about 30 vaccines with many samples of each vaccine, and we discovered they were all polluted, end quote. When all said and done, they analyzed 44 different vaccines. All of them contained harmful particles, which are foreign bodies entering into the body. and whenever this happens, the body has a reaction and it is not good. Quote, those foreign bodies, those particles are like a bullet. If I shoot somebody and that bullet makes a hole in the heart, it's not very important if the bullet was made of stainless steel, of titanium, of iron, whatever. What's important is that they punched a hole in the heart, end quote. In it, they talk a little bit about the study and what's currently going on, and you'll see the embedded video in here. This is simply the truth about modern-day science that continues to be ignored. There are 3 quotes I love to use to illustrate best what I'm trying to get across here. In the case of medicine, a lot of information has emerged showing just how much corruption really goes on in the industry. The editors-in-chief of several major medical journals have been quite blunt, with perhaps one of the best examples coming from Dr. Richard Horton, the current editor-in-chief of The Lancet, who says, quote, the case against science is straightforward. Much of the scientific literature, perhaps half, may simply be untrue, end quote. Dr. Marcia Angell, a physician and longtime editor-in-chief in the New England Medical Journal, also considered one of the most prestigious peer-reviewed medical journals in the world, alongside The Lancet, has said that, quote, it is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published or rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reach slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as the editor of New England Journal of Medicine, end quote. John Ioannidis, an epidemiologist at the Stanford University School of Medicine, published an article titled, Why Most Published Research Findings Are False, which subsequently became the most widely accessed article in the history of the Public Library of Science. Here is another great quote by Arnold Seymour Relman. He lived between 1923 and 2014, Harvard professor of medicine and former editor-in-chief of New England Medical Journal. Quote, the medical profession is being bought by the pharmaceutical industry, not only in terms of the practice of medicine, but also in terms of teaching and research. The academic institutions of this country are allowing themselves to be paid agents of the pharmaceutical industry, and I think it's disgraceful, end quote. Other examples of corruption. In 2016, a group of scientists in the CDC named SPIDER, that is, Scientists Preserving Integrity, Diligence, and Ethics, put out a list of complaints in the form of a letter to the CDC's Chief of Staff where they say, quote, it appears that our mission is being influenced and shaped by outside parties and rogue interests, and congressional intent for our agency is being circumvented by some of our leaders. What concerns us most is that it's becoming the norm and not the rare exception, end quote. This was covered by several activists, from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to another article from the Huffington Post, but unfortunately it received little to no mainstream media attention. Shortly before this, and perhaps even more shockingly, is the whistleblower testimony from a senior CDC scientist who has authored multiple commonly cited studies that show no link whatsoever between the MMR vaccine and autism. In fact, one of his studies, published in 2004, is the most commonly cited study used to debunk the link between MMR vaccine and autism. His name is Dr. William Thompson, and he bravely told the world that it was, quote, the lowest point, end quote, in his career that he went along with that paper. He said that the authors, quote, didn't report significant findings, end quote, that he is completely ashamed of what he did, that he was, quote, complicit and went along with this, and that he regrets that he has been part of the problem, end quote. And here's the official statement from Dr. Thompson describing the situation in his own words. Is perhaps the best source of information regarding this matter. It's in the link here in the source. These are just a few examples out of many. So this is a very disturbing conclusion. The research shows that these nanoparticles and nanodust are in all the vaccines that they had tested. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, You will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.